Welcome to this episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. I'm Taylor Burton-Edwards, Liturgy Man, your Director of Worship Resources with Discipleship Ministries of the United Methodist Church. I am your proportionate dollars at work to help you strengthen worship and the leadership of worship where you are. We begin our summer series of 2017 with a 3-week focus on copyright in worship. Thought this would be a good time to do this since some pastors are transitioning out and others are transitioning in. As you're beginning to leave or making your preparations to move to a new appointment, this is a good time to make sure that your copyright situation is in order. And as you begin the process of ministry, perhaps in July 1 or later, it's a good time to focus on making sure that you know you have in place what you need so that your worship is done in a legal way according to U.S. copyright law. I'll make a note that everything I talk about in this series, this week and the next two, is only referencing United States copyright law. And it's important that if you're not in the United States, you need to follow the copyright laws that do apply to where you live. I thought we'd begin this series by looking at 2 things you can do with items, including copyrighted items, as part of worship according to U.S. copyright law. The first of those has to do with what public domain is. Under U.S. copyright law, and this is you can find this in Circular 15A, public domain applies to all items published before January 1, 1923. Just remember that number. If it's earlier than 1923, it's in the public domain. And if it's in the public domain, you can do with it whatever you like. There's a lot of wonderful things that churches can use that were published before January 1, 1923. So take advantage of that as you draw together your resources for worship. You can reproduce them, you can perform them, you can even sell them if you like. So there are lots of things you can do with things that are public domain, and copyright law allows for that. The second thing is from another publication. This is the total publication of what's referred to as Title 17, which contains the copyright law of the United States. If you look up United States copyright law online, you should be able to find this as probably the first entry. This is the 2016 edition of that publication. If you go to section 110, on page 24, and then turn over one more page to page 25. Section 110 talks about those things that are not that are considered to be not violations of copyright. And this is item number 3, which is on page 25 at the bottom. I'll just sort of show it to you here where it is on the page, there at the bottom. These things are things you can do legally under U.S. copyright law. Now listen very carefully to them because it's a limited list and it does not allow you to do reproduction or other things. It says exactly what you are allowed to do. And if it's not on this list, then you're not allowed to do it with copyrighted materials unless you have obtained some other permission to do so. So here's what you can do. Performance of a non-dramatic literary work. Performance of a musical work. Performance of a dramatico-musical work of a religious nature, only those that are religious dramatico-musical works, or display of a work. So you can do all those things. You can perform them. You cannot reproduce the words, you cannot reproduce the music, you cannot do those sorts of things, but you can perform them, or if it's a non-motion picture image of a work of art or a work of art itself, you can display it. All those things, even if they are copyrighted, you can do in a worship service, not Sunday school, not small groups, not camping ministries, but in a worship service, you can do all those things. So sometimes we think about copyrighted laws telling you what you can't do. Here are some things you can do. Remember, the important date, 1923, and these particular things that you can perform or display as part of worship. Hope this has been helpful. Remember, you can always contact me, worship@umcdiscipleship.org, on our UMC Worship Facebook group, or just drop a line here on this page, and perhaps your suggestion will show up as part of our a subsequent episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. May the peace of Christ be always with you.